Novelist Arthur C. Clarke has a law, and it goes, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and no truer words have been spoken concerning how the third world views a functioning civilization. The reason I wanted to make this video is because we all have a good conspiracy theory. I mean, anyone who was doubtful about the origins of COVID-19 or the efficacy of masks, lockdowns, social distancing measures, even COVID vaccines seem to have been utterly vindicated as time has gone on, despite being branded with the scarlet letter as a science denier or a conspiracy theorist by the government, media, and medical establishment. And so it's a real shame to see conspiracy theories be the property of low IQ, low impulse control third worlders who are spreading them just to chase the monetary incentives of most of said third world being brought online to the internet in the last few years. And what prompted this discussion was a Pakistani media account on X saying that 100,000 people, 10 hours of stadium performances and speeches, and a digital AI twin of Charlie Kirk were impossible to arrange within less than a week for the Charlie Kirk Memorial, where President Trump and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, Tucker Carlson and Jack Posobiec, they all spoke in honor of their slain friend, Charlie Kirk, who was murdered by a demented transgender leftist. And as I pointed out, most of the rise in conspiracy-brained takes are sort of spurging on the internet, on X, YouTube, etc., specifically X, in the last few years, because the third world got internet access somewhere around 2023, and they can't actually comprehend how functioning civilization works. So they can't distinguish between European levels of competence and magic. Like the sort of hidden hand of the spirits at work through people. And we should have seen this coming back when PewDiePie went to war with T-Series as to who could be the largest account. The third world are very clannish, very ethnocentric, and very superstitious. And so this means when their culture collides with ours, they find us incomprehensible. And also, those ethnic and tribal grievances play out on social media, and it skews the incentives for our political discourse. I mean, the only solution to this is if you pay for X, you should be able to region block. Like, I should never be able to interact with an account from India, China, and Pakistan ever again. That's a feature that Elon Musk needs to implement. But this is a pretty consistent feature, and it happens whether the accounts are ran from Pakistan or India, or whether Pakistanis and Indians are in my country. For example, when these Southport riots happened, and the Southport protests following Axel Rudakabana slaying 3 children and injuring about 10 or 11 other adults in the UK last summer, there was instantly fake news spread about the identity of the attacker. It was apparently a Syrian illegal migrant called Ali Akshati, and that was entirely fabricated, and it was spread by people who didn't vet their sources. I was not one of them, but the source came from a fake news website that was ran by a Pakistani national. So the police in Pakistan told the BBC that Farhan Asif was linked to a website which gave a false name for the suspected Southport attacker, and suggested incorrectly that he was an asylum seeker who arrived in the UK on a small boat, and the website was Channel 3 Now. Now, the Pakistani police dropped charges. Why? Because if this really was the catalyst to the Southport protests and riots, and I dispute that narrative, is mainly because of regional deprivation, the long-standing grooming gang scandal in that town, the fact that for decades the British public voted against mass migration and were ignored, and have been repeatedly punished by increasing costs and a number of avoidable crimes committed by legal and illegal migrants alike. And just the overwhelming grief by northern towns as they looked at 3 young children being slain by an ungrateful second-generation Rwandan who never needed to be here in the first place, and that grief contorted into rage, and the entire population looked back in anger. I think those were all responsible rather than one random bit of Pakistani fake news. But it's very interesting that, one, conspiratorial thinking is engineered by people from the Indian subcontinent, and 2, that those actions by people from the Indian subcontinent now collide with and have an impact on our politics. And the same happened again. There was a man from Birmingham, Ehsan Hussein, good Birmingham name, who used a fake name to pose as a racist white man to send messages on a Telegram channel. And he has now been jailed for 2 years and 4 months for incitement to racial hatred, and he tried to encourage violence in the Alum Rock and Bordersley Green areas of Birmingham. And he said that he wanted to incite riots in largely Muslim areas to provoke violence and then have the Muslims react with violence in kind, try and stoke some kind of ethno-religious war between the native population and Muslim enclaves in Britain. And he said, we need to take back what's ours, posing as a white chap. So you can see how a lot of this internet discourse, this acceleration towards violence, this conspiratorial thinking, is stoked by people from the subcontinent, from the third world, who, given their clannishness because of high rates of cousin marriage, who, because their particular regions never went through the secular liberal materialism of the Enlightenment, they still have superstitious thinking baked in, lots of whom believe that spirits or unforeseen forces or even jinn and demons control people's actions and so exculpate them from personal responsibility. You can see how this would augment our politics, augment our discourse. If suddenly there's a mass influx of people, both physically and digitally, into our countries and into our online discourse. And this is another one. This is not just on the left. This is not just against the right. This is within the right. I mean, there are multiple anonymous accounts, slop accounts as they're known on X, that have taken advantage of the right being ascendant, of X being a liberalized mode for political discourse for people who were formerly censored to talk about taboo topics, and have created anonymous accounts to just spread, frankly, bullshit with the bright red slop sirens to farm engagement for X monetization. Perfect example of this was Inevitable West, who was meant to be an Indian posting crypto stuff, which, as Keith Woods pointed out, did he forget to switch his account when he did this? Inevitable West, I remember, had over-exaggerated the number of people attending the first farmers' protest, saying hundreds of thousands of patriots will take the streets in Britain and block traffic with their tractors and lay siege to Parliament, and Elon Musk, at the time, inadvertently amplified this. This is just one of many true British patriot accounts actually run by an Indian, and the reason is they're farming engagement because the currency exchange rate means you can live like a king in India or Malaysia or the Philippines or Pakistan on a relatively low salary that you get by just engagement farming online and skewing the monetary incentives. And remember again, there isn't a prohibition against lying in this culture, because there isn't the commandment not to bear false witness. There isn't the treatment of everyone as an equal human being with inviolable dignity per the doctrine of being made in the image of God in Margot Day. It doesn't mean we're fungible, interchangeable consumer units per the blank slate, but it means we have equal moral consideration so long as we're innocent. That doesn't happen in Islam or a caste system. So it means that actually you can lie, cheat, and steal so long as it advantages you, your family, your clan, or the ummah. And actually, you're kind of a mug if you don't take advantage of other people, because they're going to take advantage of you. So it's pretty much a moral war of all against all that only something like Christianity or the English character can actually prevent. And when we plug the third world into the internet, we're actually occupying a sort of global town square, but we're not playing by the same rules. We're not engaging on the same terms. This is something that Wade Stotts actually pointed out in an excellent video on the global town square. And in this video, he highlights just how many internet users have come online recently. You see China and then India rapidly accelerating in the millions, and of course, they have about 1 billion people each, so they're going to have a disproportionate impact on discourse if they all get the internet and all get access to monetization. And then he went through a study where it showed that people from predominantly Northwest European Protestant countries, and of course America, Australia, basically the Anglosphere and Northwest Europe, are much more honest, even when it doesn't advantage them. But other countries, if they know they'll get away with it, will just cheat on tests or steal or take credit for things that they haven't done and cut corners in their work as to get ahead. So they have no problem with inflaming political discourse, posing as British people or Americans, lying and exaggerating political events to get clickbait traction and game the system to get more money. And Josiah Lippincott here actually posted a video on X showing how Indian engagement farming works. And what they do is, because only verified accounts interacting with other verified accounts get you monetized on X, it counts as a verified engagement, what other Indian or Pakistani or Chinese accounts will do is they'll purchase verification and then they'll all interact with each other. And so they will take a disproportionate amount monthly of the X monetization pot. I know Elon has tried to crack down on this a little bit, but the engagement farming slop accounts are still in existence, which means it must still be profitable. It must still be a functioning system. And look, they have little chats saying, reply guys, let's support each other. So they exist in a circular system where they'll all reply to each other. And so they will amplify the number of verified engagements they get, especially on clickbait posts. And so they will make a relatively lucrative living spreading moronic conspiracies and engaging in total bullshit. And so it makes not just regular political discourse, but even the fun, speculative, conspiratorial discourse total third world cesspit. And this is why, I think, a lot of accounts have started pushing, especially in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, the idea that he disappeared through a trapdoor, or the idea that there was some sort of Mossad involvement, or Ukrainian involvement, or he got killed on a giant menorah. Because the third world, especially regarding Jews in Israel, thinks a lot more conspiratorially than we do. Now, that is not to say there aren't legitimate criticisms of Israel, of foreign lobbying, of America and Britain being embroiled in unwinnable wars of regime change in the Middle Eastern desert. We all share those criticisms, trust me. But if you are just going to say immediately after Charlie Kirk's death, oh, clearly Israel did it, without any evidence, which Nick Fuentes himself said, guys, you look ridiculous when you do this. You know, if Ben Shapiro got shot, would you blame Israel too? The only kind of people that fall for that sort of stuff are largely the third world posing as the first. It's like Pakistani accounts who think that the Jews are behind everything. Or, for example, Indian accounts with ethnic grievances against the British trying to foment political and civil unrest in Britain to take advantage of both the monetary incentives and political destabilization in that region. And the perfect example of this is actually all of the various anonymous accounts that took money, it seems, from an Indian lobbying firm to spread the idea that China is an enemy of the US and India is their true ally. And this is in the midst of Trump wanting to revoke H-1Bs, putting financial penalties on H-1B visas because India are the disproportionate recipients of H-1Bs. They have exploitative visa mills to take advantage of the H-1B system and will install an Indian CEO in a corporation who then goes and hires their co-ethnics and their cousins in these industries and replaces American labourers. Same thing happens in the UK, by the way. I spoke to an Uber driver recently who worked in a tech firm. He got an Indian CEO, even though he was well qualified and here for a number of years working in that profession. He got replaced by an unqualified Indian that had been brought over specifically from India, and that was only possible because Boris Johnson abolished a Gordon Brown era rule that said you have to advertise British jobs to British workers first, and only if you can't fill that job can you hire from overseas. Boris Johnson abolished that, and then him and Priti Patel imported 250,000 Indians every year. He should never be forgiven for that, by the way. But even if they aren't here, they're still affecting discourse because they are paying influencers, whether they themselves are Indian anonymous accounts or are Americans who are looking to take advantage of the fact that the third world has been brought online and so it's lucrative to pander to the third world. They are paying them to lobby on behalf of Indian interests. Elijah Schaffer originally, and it seems to have been written by ChatGPT or something like that, posted an article on the Gateway Pundit getting deep in the weeds of Indian oil policy and how actually the Indians and the Americans should be allied against the true threat of China. And then this tweet got amplified by a bunch of different accounts, like Election Wizard saying the fake news is trying to paint India as an enemy. Why? Because they've always loved and worked with Trump. Don't buy into their swamp tactics. If we make them an enemy, we'll fall into the hands of the CCP. Same with Gunter Eagleman. Same with America AF. Same with Ryan Fournier. Same with DC Drano. Same with Matt Wallace. Like, Defiant L's, community notes violations. You see how they've all got the same pattern. They all use the same photo of Trump. They use the Indian flag or a photo of Modi. America and India should stand united. Why? I wouldn't want to live in India. I wouldn't want America to turn into India. I don't want England to turn into India. Parts of it are, and it's utterly unpleasant, and it should be reversed. But all of these accounts seem to have been taking money in order to promote this. And as you can see, they're all quote retweeting Elijah Schaffer's original post here. So not only are there incentives to pander to the magical thinking of the third world with various conspiracies, And again, I'm not saying there aren't legitimate criticisms of Israel, but when you just Jewsburg about Charlie Kirk being killed on a menorah, I'm suspicious that you might be engagement farming. And it seems that our politics is being turned into a turf war between the various factions of the subcontinent that are trying to be superpowers by 2030. Perfect example of this is actually an Indian MP who has written a piece in the Indian Express saying, can we leverage Indian diasporas to exert demographic and democratic pressure on Western countries to improve relations with India? And this is why the Indians are positioning themselves as an alternative to the Chinese and the Russians, and they're saying, oh, we can be a brand new trade route for the EU and the US in the Middle East now that the Houthis have closed down part of the Strait of Hormuz and are trying to block the Suez Canal. They are trying to take advantage of global instability and use the fact that they've dispersed their citizens and co-ethnics around the globe to exert pressure via those diasporas and lobbying organizations to advantage India. This is why Modi calls these diasporas living bridges, because they bridge back to the motherland. That's a phrase that Priti Patel, while Home Secretary, used to describe Indians in Britain, by the way. So she's doing the bidding of the Indian government through immigration and now foreign policy as Shadow Foreign Secretary. And so, if this is how they think about us, we should just stop them being able to do this. We should ban all visas and immigration from India. We should rescind many visas from India. We should not cut any new trade deals or bilateral aid agreements with India. And we should be allowed to region block on social media, if we pay for it, accounts from India, Pakistan, China, take your pick. You should be able to have a complete checklist of all the countries in the world and just untick those and watch all of these British Patriot or MAGA influencer accounts go dark overnight. They will be deprived of funding, they'll be deprived of eyeballs, and we will be able to tune out the magical conspiratorial thinking of the third world and actually have probably a sensible conversation that's evidence-based and less schizophrenic. Again, final point I'll make is, if you want to pander to these people, because it is financially lucrative, understand what you're doing to your civilization. In the short term, you're getting a lot of money for bringing third world eyeballs to your content. In the long term, you're holding open the door to these sort of people. So this is in response to Congressman Brandon Gill, who's saying that the H-1B visa program has been abused for far too long, and it's just a visa mill for foreign workers. And this is an Indian account saying, America is a nation that was illegally colonized by white Europeans by abusing the natives. Untrue. The modern development of America was done with the money Europeans looted from India. Indians have more rights to the resources of America than white Europeans. If India was so rich and powerful, why were all of those resources in the ground? And why were they so easily defeated by a tiny island, Great Britain, who were apparently impoverished and culturally inferior compared to the Indians? Why did the Indians get colonized in the first place? The only reason this tweet exists is because they have undiluted ethnic grievance against whites and Brits. And so, if this is how India, Pakistan, China, etc. thinks of us, maybe don't make your livelihood contingent on pandering to their sheer demographic volume by telling them what they want to hear. Because that might be profitable in the short term. In the long term, you're selling out your civilization. You're destroying our ability to have healthy discourse. And I think things would be just far better if we stopped pandering to the ethnic grievances and schizo posting of the third world.